Officials announced that a core group of 19 are left. But before we declare the mass hunger strike more or less over, let's take a quick look back at how the protest played out and what has changed since it started. On February 6th, the hunger strike reportedly began. Lawyers and humanitarian groups said the detainees' initial reason for the strike was the constant and invasive searches that guards conducted on the cells, as well as the confiscation of several Qurans. However, it took weeks before prison officials formally acknowledged what was going on. But even then, their numbers of how many people were actually participating was significantly lower than other reports. Over 2 months into the strike, the spokesman for the High Commissioner for the UN human rights body wrote a letter to RT saying that they are looking into the details of the mass hunger strike. And throughout this time, the more the public knew about the hunger strike, the more protests and petitions actually took place across the country. Guantanamo detainees saw a new change of command on April 12th, when the Obama administration appointed Rear Admiral Richard Butler as the new commander of the Joint Task Force Guantanamo. On April 23rd, the military realized how serious the strike was, and it sent 40 additional medical personnel to Guantanamo Bay. 7 days later, President Obama formally acknowledged the hunger strikes in a speech and reaffirmed his commitment to permanently closing down the facility. A little less than a month after that, the president held his first major foreign policy speech in years at the National Defense University, where he began to lay out his plans to transfer detainees out of Gitmo. He also announced that he would assign a senior envoy to lead that task. It was the moment human rights advocates and prisoners themselves have been waiting to hear for months during the hunger strikes and also during those forced feedings. But that momentum stopped abruptly on June 4th, when the House of Representatives not only voted to keep the facility open, but to block the use of taxpayer money to house detainees transferred out of the prison. But some members of Congress wanted to see for themselves just how bad the conditions really were at Gitmo. President Obama's chief of staff, Dennis McDonough, along with Senators Feinstein and McCain, traveled to Cuba. When they came back, they announced that 104 people were still refusing to eat, 41 of whom were being force-fed. Now, in order to bring attention to the cause and to show how inhumane force feeding can be, one protester went on a 61-day fast. On September 7th, he allowed himself to be force-fed in front of the White House. And then Monday, military officials announced that they will stop releasing daily hunger strike updates because the number of protesters steadily dropped to a core group of 19 defiant protesters. Now, keep in mind that throughout all of this, lawyers of the detainees complained that the military was trying to force the men to end their hunger strikes by denying them water or even visiting rights. Lawyer David Reams described on RT how guards were subjecting detainees to invasive body searches before they met with their lawyers. The guards actually felt up the men's genitals, and that is something that is strictly forbidden in Islam. So many men simply stopped going to their appointments. Those searches were temporarily halted, but then they started once again. Also, the military was slow to realize that the hunger strike was actually happening and that the numbers varied dramatically from the reports from lawyers and human rights groups. Take a look at this. This is the line that shows the official prison count for the hunger strikers as was reported by the military. The officials started the count on March 14th with 9 and then slowly, very slowly moved up that line to over 106 participants. Meanwhile, this is how human rights lawyers and humanitarians say that the hunger strike played out. So obviously there is a huge difference when it comes to the hunger strike and when it started, and also how many people were participating. But eventually, officials did acknowledge that 106 men were participating at one point in time.